Today I'm going to show you one method of processing your RGB and LRGB images that you have taken. Once you have captured all of your nighttime images of a target, you will need to register the images, stack them together, and then in the case of monochrome subframes that you have taken through filters, combine them together to create one full color frame. I will show you the most common software that is used for processing the astro images and how the first steps of processing is done. I took a few images of M27, the Dumbbell Nebula, the other night in the filters of luminance, red, green and blue. I will share these images that I've captured with a link in the description so you can also have a go at processing them. We'll be using DeepSkyStacker for the initial registering and stacking of the individual channels, and then we'll move over to Photoshop to do the combining and initial processing, including how to add your luminance data to an RGB image. DeepSkyStacker is available free. DeepSkyStacker is a freeware program that's available on the internet at deepskystacker.free.fr. It's a Windows-based program, and if you go into that website there are tutorials and lots of screenshots and other things that will help you along your way. Instead of Photoshop, there is some free software called GIMP that can be used for all of the things that I'll show you in Photoshop. Let's begin. The first thing we'll want to do is go into Windows and then open up DeepSkyStacker. When you've opened it, you'll see on the left hand side these are all the menu commands that we'll be using. I haven't got any dark flat frames or offset bias files, no calibration files whatsoever. I've just supplied the light frames for this particular task. So we'll open up open picture files, the first one, and you'll see here these are all the files that I will put in the description or a link of in the description for you. We'll highlight all of them together. So let's do that and open them. And what will happen is they'll be put into a list at the bottom of the screen here. And this is a list of all the files, details of the sizes, what type of files, they're fixed files here, the exposures are held here. If you're using a DSLR camera, you'll have other information, maybe the ISO of the files itself. Now, all of these are shown as grey images because we've used filters actually for the luminance, the red, green and blue. If we hit this settings option here, you'll see that we've got lots of details about whether we're using a Bayer matrix, etc. If I'm using a DSLR, then I would probably click on that and choose what type of stacking I'll be registering and stacking I'll be using. But these are monochrome images. We don't need to have any of those and leave everything as standard there. Now the first thing that we will need to do is we need to register all these images. That's make sure that each one of the images are skewed and aligned so that all of the stars and the nebula inside are lining up on top, on top of each other in the same place on each one of the images. So we'll check all of these. We're just going to use standard settings here and click register checked pictures. Now we don't want to stack these at the moment, so I'll do automatic detection of hot pixels. I'll leave the rest of it as complete recommended settings. I won't change anything at all. And click OK. That will go through a complete registering of all of the 36 files that are on here. It'll do the standard things that I've got in the parameters, which I haven't changed from when I first loaded DeepSkyStacker. It'll take out the hot frames, it'll do a quick median over to get rid of hot and cold pixels. It'll go through each one of the files and line them up. Now this does take quite a while, especially as it's got to go through and count each one of the stars and make sure they're lined up properly. So we'll speed this up and we'll come on to the next bit as soon as it's finished. Now that is all done, all of our images have been registered together. We'll get a little bit more information. We'll get a score here and details of the stars themselves. Okay, what the full width half maximum, that's a measurement of the stars, average measurement of the stars is on here. We can then use that if we want to get rid of some of our subframes and take those out, but we'll be using all of these. I've gone through all the 36 images, and it's fairly good data. So now they're registered, let's uncheck all of these. We'll only check the luminance. We're going to stack these together. At the moment they've just been registered so that it knows where all the stars are and how to align the images. Click on these. There we go. We can now click on stacked pictures. Now I've only got the luminance ones. It says luminance in the file name itself, so they're easy to identify. Click stacked images. I'm not going to change any of the parameters here. These are standard as it came with the software, and I'll leave those exactly as they are. I won't change any of these options here. I'll leave those standard as the software was loaded. I've got no calibration frames, that's why these are showing up in red here. If I click OK, what it'll do now is pick up all of those registered images, the luminance images, and it will now stack those together to create one single image. So let's speed this up and I'll come back to you as soon as it's finished. Now it's finished stacking them together, it will start building up the picture on the screen in front for us. If we look further down here, we'll see the histogram showing this S-curve on here. Now this bottom part of the histogram shows the dark pixels, and this one over on the right, top right, is the light pixels. You'll see this peak here, which is our data. So our data is just over to the left of the ramp up of the histogram. This is why the image is so dark and you can only see some of the very bright stars. We hover over those. If you look in the top, you can go over onto the stars and just make sure that they are fairly round. This isn't perfect, but it was quite a windy night, but it's okay. The data's not too bad. But we can't see too much of it because the histogram ramp up, this is where all the data is here. So by using this little arrow in the middle here, we can move that across to roughly halfway through the ramp up. This means we've got plenty of room here on the light side to work with and plenty of room on the dark to work with. If I click apply, it'll now rebuild this image here, and as you can see, even the dark side is lightening up so it's nice and grey, but we can now see the nebula in the middle here. You don't want to go too aggressive here. We'll be playing around with this in Photoshop and we'll make it lighter and make the background darker later on. But once you've got this sort of picture here and you've got this in the center and applied it, we can now save that one and go on to the next channel. So I'm going to save that as Luminous DSS. Now you'll see up here that it's already auto-saved the linear image before we stretched it, but we're not going to use those, we'll use our own file names. I've saved it as a 16-bit TIFF and save. Now that is done, we'll go on to the next channel, which will be red. So we want to uncheck all of the images, so that's unchecked all of my luminance, and now we'll start clicking on the red channels. So we've got a few here that go right down to the bottom. Check every one of those, and we go through the same process. Click on Stack Check Pictures, leaving everything the same. OK, and now it will go through all the red images and stack those together to create one image. Stacking will get rid of a lot of the noise in all of the individual images, and it will bring up our signal. It's a signal to noise ratio that we want to change. We want to have more signal and less noise. So let's speed that up, and when that's finished we'll go on to the green channels. Again, it will create an auto-saved file for us of this image that is now building up on the screen in front of us. And as before, you can see the histogram here and our peak here where our data sits. I'm going to slide that over again to roughly the middle. You can use the cursor keys just to get it a little bit better, and click apply. This will now rebuild again, and as before we can now start seeing the nebula coming up on the screen. Once it's completely rebuilt, we can now save that image or picture, as it says, to file. So I'm going to call this red DSS and save it. Now we've done the luminance and red, uncheck all, and we'll go on to the green. So they're further up the scale here somewhere. Slide down until we find the greens. Here they are. And I'll click on those. Oops. Making sure I've got all of them. And the last green there, yes, it's gone. So back onto stack checked pictures. Leave everything as it is and OK. And again, we'll speed up this. Again, once it's saved the file, exactly the same will happen. It'll build up a linear image for us on the screen. Again, the histogram data is across, so we'll move that. Now, if I move it right up into the white area here and apply it, you can see what happens. It gets too white. So we'll move that down again and apply. You can see what it does at different levels on the histogram here. If we go too far on the dark side of it, then it'll just go almost completely black. We've just got a couple of stars going through. So as before, in the middle of the histogram somewhere, we're only doing this now because it saves us having to do it in Photoshop. We'll click on that and apply. We'll still have to play with the levels and the histogram in Photoshop, but let's give it a start in this program. Wait for that to build up, and once it's completely built up, save that picture to file. I'll call that one green DSS. The reason I'm putting DSS at the end is because I use lots of different stacking programs, mainly PixInsight, but this time we're using DSS, so it's just to show those are the types of stacking methods I'm using. So save. That's our green channel. One more to go. Uncheck all. Find the blue files and check those ones. Now we are not using a lot of files here. Sometimes I would have 20 or 30 individual images for each channel, but so this will all be fairly quick. Stack check pictures. OK. And again, we'll speed up this until it's finished. And once again, we'll move our data to the middle of the histogram somewhere. Up there, and apply it. Wait for it to build up, and then we'll save that picture. Click on save, and last one will be blue DSS. save. We've now registered and stacked all of our channels, so let's get on to the more exciting parts and we'll move on into Photoshop. Now we're in Photoshop, what we want to do is open up those 4 files that we've created into DeepSkyStacker. So click Open, Original Files, and here they are. There's our blue, green and luminance, so I'll open those 3 up. And one more open. Down here somewhere will be our red. So, if we look at the tabs at the top, we've got red, there's our luminance, there's a green, and there's a blue. Now you can see at the moment that they're still quite fuzzy. We can only just see the nebula in them and the background is really light. So on here we're going to click on levels and you can see there's our histogram down the bottom here. We've got the light data at the top here, we've got the dark data down the bottom here, and the main bit of data is in the middle. What I'm going to do is slide up that black one, not to hit where the data is, okay, but just off of it. And I'm going to, the middle one, just open that up a little bit there. As you can see, it's now changed what we had before. It's gone a little bit darker and some of the stars are now a little bit brighter. I'm going to click on the levels again and I'm going to do another movement with it. Exactly the same, just bringing up some of the light here, clipping off, well I'm not clipping the dark, I'm not actually on the dark yet. You don't really want to clip data, okay, clipping data is quite bad. Now we have got some very dark pixels here that we may look at a little bit more in depth later. Certainly don't want to clip any of the light, okay, you clip some of the light and the image will start looking very ugly indeed. Now I've done that, I'm going to do a little bit of a curves here. So I'm going to do an S curve where I'll darken some of the background there and down here I'll lighten some of the foreground a little bit, only a little bit. Do everything a bit at a time. Back onto levels, I'm going to just increase that a little bit. Once that's done, what I'll do here actually is I'll just create another background copy there so we can see. If I highlight all of these and merge everything that we've done together, merge those layers together, we can now see the difference. This was when we first loaded it up and this is now what we've got. And it's pretty good. We can see the nebula there quite nicely. We can see all the stars very well. We've even got a double star there, which is there's nice pattern between both of those. That's our blue channel. We'll flatten all of this image by highlighting everything together and flatten it. We're going to do the same thing with all of them. So we'll go into the green now and we'll have a look at the histogram here and we'll change things a little bit. I'll go into curves at this stage actually and just darken off that background, lighten the foreground a little bit. Okay, and if we have a look, we're fairly close to what I did on the blue there, so I'm quite happy with that. I'm going to flatten that image. And now the red. You can do things in many iterations, but for this at the moment, you'd spend a lot more time on this hopefully to get the results a little bit better. This is just showing you how to do it. So on this one here, I'm going to do 2 lots of levels there. Just minute changes. This is on the red channel here. Do a little bit of an S curve there as well. Okay, again, not going too far. If I start going too far, things start to look a little bit silly or ugly. Okay, I mean we can really wreck our image quite nicely if we do anything more than a simple little S curve there. Once we're happy with it, highlight all of that, flatten the image. So we've done a bit of processing on our individual channels there, except for the luminance. Now the luminance channel we want to do slightly different. It's the same but different. We want the background a lot darker, and we want the highlights a lot lighter. So we need to do a little bit more work on this one. Again, I'm going to do our levels. Bring this across a little bit just to give us a nice starting point. Now I'm going to go into curves and lift that a little bit more than I would on the other channels, and down a little bit more there. Okay, I'm also going to do a little bit of a contrast here, which will darken the background a little bit more. I'm going to go back into levels, bring that up a little bit, and then back into curves. And do another S curve. Like that. We've got quite a lot of stars at the background, so that's looking quite good. Once I've done it all, I'm going to highlight all of this and flatten that image. Okay, now if we zoom in on this, we can see there's a little bit of noise. We'll deal with that. You can deal with that later. There's a nice little nebula there, and all of our stars are looking quite pretty. So once we've done that, we've now done all of our channels, whatever data processing we're going to do, just intermediate processing. The red, green and blue are still quite light on the background, but the luminance is a lot darker. Now what we're going to do, go to our red channel, we're going to select all of that channel and copy it. Edit, copy. Once we've done that, that's in on the clipboard. We're going to go to File and New. Once that comes up, we're going to give it a file name. I'll call it M27 LRGB. We don't want grayscale. We want that as RGB color. It's picked up the width and the height from the clipboard, so we don't have to deal with any of that, and we'll just go OK. And it'll create for us a new image. If we go into that image, we'll see here we've got layers, we've also got channels. We're going to click on the channels here, and we're going to be dealing with each channel in turn. Now I've got on the clipboard at the moment everything from the red file. I highlighted all of that and copied. We can do that again if we wanted to. Copy. Go back to our new file, and in the red we will then paste. Just in the red. So highlight the red there, so it's just got the eye showing there on the red. We've pasted that in. We'll now go onto our green file here, select all, edit, copy, and then go back into our new file that we've created. This at the moment is just the red data we put on there. We'll now click onto the green, which at the moment is completely blank, and we'll paste our green on there. Now we'll click on the blue there, click on the file blue, select all, edit, copy, go to our new file, and we'll paste in our blue data. Now if we click on RGB now, we should find that we've got a color image, and we can see the nebula there with the blues and the reds on it quite nicely. We've got some lovely colors on some of these stars around here. The background's a little bit washy, but we'll deal with that. Once you've put all the channels together, we can go into layers, and we can now click on our histogram levels, showing our histogram here. Now you'll see we've got a couple of different peaks here showing. So those are the individual channels. If we click on each channel individually, we can see that those peaks are in slightly different positions there. So I'm going to go onto the blue, and I'm going to move that up to close to the black point. Not on it, but close to it. I'm now going to go to the green, and I'm going to do exactly the same. Move that close to it. You'll see the picture itself is changing as I'm doing these. So now we've got quite a lot of red background here, but I'm going to do exactly the same to the red. There you go. Once you've got it right, you'll have a fairly black, nice image there. Click black on RGB, and we can lighten that all up if we wanted to, which I will do here. Okay, I'm going to do a little curves on this. So this time, lighten that, darken there. You can see how, sorry, it's gone the wrong way. Got to lighten the front, yeah. Straighten that off on there a little bit. Don't want it to go too silly. So there, and then back to our levels, and the RGB now, I'm just bringing that up a little bit. I'm not going to clip that data. There. I'm going to go into contrast, which will just contrast the background a little bit and darken it a little bit more. And there we go. We've got, again, it's a little bit light at the back, but we've got a nice little image there. So I'm going to highlight all of that and flatten that image. Now we've got our RGB data. It's quite nice there. We can do lots of other things if we wanted to. We can change the vibrance of the colours, and we can increase that a little bit to give us a little bit more colour there. We can change the saturation itself and make it a little bit more cartoony. We can do over there. That's a bit too much there. Just give it a little bit. Once we've got our RGB data though, make sure that you flattened the image completely. And the next thing is to go back to our luminance. With our luminance, we'll select all, edit, copy, just the same as we did before, and go to our new image. Now this time we haven't got a channel for luminance here, we've just got red, green and blue. So on your layers, you literally just paste it, and it'll create a nice new layer on top of our RGB layer. If I turn that off, here's our color data and here's our luminance data. Click on luminance, and we can name that luminance if we wanted to, or lum or L. But up here we've got what to do with that that particular channel. And if you look at the bottom, we've got luminosity. So click on luminosity down there, and now we've got the color data. There's our color data shining through our luminance. Now remember, we made the luminance a lot darker at the background and a lot lighter on the foreground. It's like looking through a filter, completely through a filter. Now we've got that as luminosity. Once we've done that, highlight both of those and flatten it. And now it's the final bit that we need to deal with. So I'm going to go into the levels and have a look at those and maybe change these just slightly, just to change this background. There's usually a lot more processing after this. You might do some star masks, some color masks and things to change things on here. Just very briefly here, put these together. It'll be other videos that we'll do some deeper processing on here, but at the moment it's really just to show you how to put everything together. I'm going to change that contrast slightly, and there we go. Once I've done it all, I will flatten that image and then File, Save As. I'm not going to have it as a Photoshop one, I'm going to have that as a TIFF. Actually, I'll have it as a JPEG down there. And save. And there's our final image. Okay, I hope you found this useful. We've done quite a lot in this short video here. We've registered all of our individual subframes. We've stacked them all together. We've then gone into Photoshop and combined them, including the luminance, to create a final image here. This isn't really a final image. You would do more processing on it, but it's how to get to this stage that I've tried to do. Okay, I hope you have fun with the files. Like I said, they'll be in the descriptions. If you like the video, do like it. Subscribe to my channel. There will be more as we go along, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.